Hello, my name is Roger Griffith. I'm delighted to be asked by St. Paul's Carnival to talk about my Windrush experience through the generations. I'm the author of this book, My American Odyssey. So quite literally, the Windrush experience has given me so much of my life, which I've documented. And I'm about to share that experience with you now. So it begins with the story of the Windrush generation for me. Through the generations, I'm going to title this My Life in Arts, Activism, and Advocacy, and how I've taken that into academia. A little bit about me. I'm the author of this book, My American Odyssey, the former chair of Virginia Radio and a broadcaster there. Also run my own consultancy called Creative Connects as well. I'm passionate about the arts and how it gives people like myself an opportunity. My story starts here with those signs: no Irish, no blacks, no dogs. As well, in terms of my family coming over from the Caribbean. You can see a Guyanese flag in there, but those signs really gave me a sense of the first initial racism that my parents had experienced, how that permeated into my life. This is my school in Lawrence Weston in Bristol. Mostly a white working class area, right by my docks. Those are the factories that were nearby. And I left school without any education at all. I didn't know anything about Windrush or anything else for that matter. During that year, I left school. It was the year, sadly, of the New Cross fire. It was 40 years ago. But also during that year, Brixton and Handsworth and Toxteth had uprisings or riots. The year before that, on the left-hand side, you see St. Paul's and riots outside the black and white calf. This story, 3 million unemployed, uprising and riots, being stopped and searched by the police, chased by the National Front, being told to go back home. But I was born in Britain, 13 dead, nothing said. All gave me a sense of great anger, but also trying to understand my identity. It was that gentleman there, Malcolm X's work and his autobiography really changed my life. And his himself has got Caribbean roots, but his story really about redemption, about taking charge of your life, taking responsibility, but also you can be something else and not just what was defined by others for you, really spoke to me. So I connected with my family, my Windrush family, from my mum, my sisters who were there, and my granddad as well. I never met, but was from the Caribbean, and he really, you see him in his Mason's outfit. He felt part of Britain, even though he never came here, never knew what it even existed. Right? But he was sending his two boys, his sons, over to help rebuild the country after World War II. That sense of empire, that sense of a connection was really strong there, whether I liked it or not. This was my story and experience. Went back even further, and that Carib as part that gives the Caribbean its name. Well, that's the Caribbean people, the Caribs to be precise, the Tahinos, the Arawaks, all gave me a sense of someone else was on the land. And how did we get to the land? Well, we were taken there. We were taken from Africa. My sister was a Rastafarian. She's now buried in Ghana as well, but she had this strong sense of her African spirituality from people like Marcus Garvey, and then through that Rastafarian community there, and helped in terms of my understanding of who I was through the African diaspora, through that connection, and through the struggle, and also through those Caribbean islands and how they'd come about into that Commonwealth as well, which wasn't so common. What I call roots and roots then is what I explored there. My mum went to school. Those were the sugarcane fields that she passed, towering above her. But she famously knew more about the kings and queens in Britain than she did in Africa, but also exploring about how we came to be in the Caribbean. So I saw the TV series Roots, that I understood around anything around slavery as well. So following that connection from Britain to the Caribbean via Africa and back again, really gave me a sense of identity, but also through into North America as well. So it was Bristol in the Caribbean, was my next port of call, shall we say, that the city I grew up in, I call home, and still proud to call home, was really the number one slave trading port during the 1730s, and had made so many of its riches from that. At the same time, during that time, there were abolitionists there, women who boycotting sugar. Which is obviously very prominent from the place I come from, the Demerara sugar. Again, not for that, you can see that from where my father went to school as well. So these connections through that Atlantic sea that really gave me that sense of history, and the things weren't just black and white. There was far more to discover from the evil trades of Edward Colston right the way through to the abolitionists. There was far more to the story that I knew. I mentioned the riots earlier. Well, they, that didn't come from nowhere. Rebellion and resistance is in our blood. Quite literally, that's something we fought for, not just from people like Wilberforce as well, but there were freedom fighters, as I like to call them, Nanny Maroons, the Quaminas, the Cuffies, as well as Sam Sharp, whose rebellion ended the slave trade in the Caribbean. Some 27 years later, then was decreed as the transatlantic slave trade. All of this then from the work again in Bristol of David Olusoga and the University College of London. Again, more stories, more history, in a sense of history. Remember, I couldn't even, when I went to Barbados on one occasion, I couldn't even step over a plantation. But this sense of history, once I really read more and more about it from the Eric Williams, the Premier of Trinidad, from the work of David Olusoga, many more, finding out about all these stories that were really part of my life and my connection. That empire again was like a stick of rock running through me, even to the fact that I'd actually helped and contributed, paid back some of the money that was paid to the slave owners, and certainly not the people who worked the land as my ancestors in the Caribbean. This again gave me that sense of storytelling then, from the indigenous people through the transatlantic slave trade, the empire and Commonwealth, my connections through the US, the arrival as well, and many stories that were that sense of storytelling, that sense of art led to my advocacy, led to my activism as well, turning that anger of being beaten up by skinheads into something that was an experience as part of being black and British growing up here in the UK. Celebrating as well through the work of others, the work of our nurses, for instance, just being one of them as well, giving that to what the NHS had done in the country, like Joyce Stevenson and many others as well. The communities that we built in Handsworth, Moss Side, Chapeltown, St Anne's, and St Paul's, as well as adding to existing communities like Butetown and Toxteth, and that metropole of Brixton being the central place of our connections that we built. So we had real roots here that went back not just the pre Windrush, but decades and centuries as well. Back in Bristol, though, the end of the Bristol bus boycott, again, that's that storytelling narrative. Work, I'd found out through one of my heroes that came to be through that ended on the day of his speech, 28th of August, 1963. Another storytelling then became, so I came into, sharing these tales, looking for these bits of history, being doing the research behind that. So it's the date where Emmett Till was murdered as well, famous date, the 28th of August. And that story in Bristol through Roy Hackott as well, and just his story as well. He comes from the country and farming land himself. No one ever asked him that, never told him that. That resonated with me and became part of the black and green story that Ajima and also my own, along with others working through the Black Seeds Network, as well as the Black and Green Ambassadors, and many more projects that we've started with Bristol Green Capital and many others, including the University of Bristol. So promoting advocacy, these stories in terms of what the Bristol bus boycott had done for in terms of race relations, and also being there for the story of President Barack Obama. And on that day in America, Janet and Rory Teep gave birth to Olivia, and that was a story I decided to capture within the book, as well as my uncle who left Guyana and became the first and still only Black bishop of Connecticut in America. So I turned that into my life growing up Black and British, the proud things that we've achieved through that Race Relations Act, that we'd set off all those Equalities Act as well. That's something that we can celebrate and be proud of as part of that contribution that we've given in politics and sport, in our music, and much, much more done, including, of course, the St. Paul's Carnival, and many things that we have done and occurred through that. Celebrated that in my advocacy at Chima Radio, and many, many other stories, including conversations, and it's still there that we see that story today, that story of proudness in terms of the murals and arts and activism that you can see that we took into a project at University of West England. We looked at the next generations of people to be wanting to learn and explore things in Bristol and Britain in terms of the contribution of the Black community that we've done with my colleagues there. So we talked about community engagement, filmmaking, fashion, and much, much more throughout that there. And so my final part is just to say that's where the Windrush connection has come from. A study really of lifelong learning and understanding. I was unemployed, taken that into my, as a housing officer at Seed, taken that through to leaving as a senior manager, my broadcasting, as CEO for Gima and my own consultancy, and it's given me so much, and will continue to provide through the generations. My name is Roger Griffith. You can find out more about me at these places. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me today.